In 1940, the French philosopher Jean-Paul Satre wrote a play called No Exit. Anybody familiar with that? The play begins with three individuals in the afterlife. These three souls find themselves in a room with no door and where the windows are completely bricked up. Thus the title, No Exit. To make matters worse, these three really irritate each other. And because they irritate each other, they try and change each other. And that doesn't go so well. It only escalates their frustration. And they slowly start to realize that hell isn't fire and brimstone or the torture chamber they'd imagined. Hell is, in fact, other people. Some of you are sitting by hell right now, I can tell. Hell is other people, people who won't do or change or behave the way that we want them to. That's what they discovered hell was. Now, this is a play, but how many of us find ourselves with people who irritate or annoy us? Yeah, okay, let's hear for that. And what happens when our attempts to fix them don't work? How many of you can relate to this? Yeah, it's frustrating, isn't it? Why am I telling you this? Why does this even matter? Whether you are the president of a company, or you are on the front lines, or you're an entrepreneur starting your own company, or whatever your role is, more and more is required of us. And we're all measured in a lot of different ways. But the ultimate measure is by the results we get. So the question is, how do you get your results? Unless you are a pro golfer, or you run a company where you are the only employee, you get your results with and through other people. So we're measured by our results, we get our results through other people, and other people are really difficult to change or even influence. You relate to this? It's frustrating, isn't it? If we're in Sartre's play, we want to move to a different room. We want to find different people, better people, smarter people, people who don't need to be changed, people who just get it. And we find the people in that new room have other problems. So we go to the next room and the next room, continually looking for these perfect people who don't exist. And while it may not always feel like hell, it certainly doesn't feel like paradise. So what do? The late Dr. Stephen R. Covey, best-selling author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and a man I had the great privilege of working with for many years, said that everything starts with the individual because all meaningful change comes from the inside out. Systemic organizational change can't happen without changes in individual behavior. Now, let's return to this room in Sartre's play for a minute. No door, windows bricked up. One other important detail in this room. In this room, there are no mirrors. So even if they wanted to, these people who are so busy trying to change each other, they don't have the ability to stop and look and say, what do I need to do differently? What do I need to change? What do I need to model? So I'd like to talk about just that, taking a look in the mirror. Because we get results through others, the most important competency we can develop and then continue to perfect each and every day is our ability to influence. And we do that by starting with ourselves. For the past 30 years, I'm old, I've observed and coached leaders and others at all levels in organizations. And from the literally hundreds of paradigms and principles and tools contained in Franklin Covey's world-class solutions, I've identified those specific practices that positively influence and in some cases change others. I've put them in a book called Get Better, 15 Proven Practices to Build Effective Relationships at Work. Now, certainly not in this group, but in many groups, people hear the word relationships and think, okay, that's nice, but I got a company to run, or I got this project to finish, or I got these people to lead. We're going to stop and talk about relationships? Now, I know you all get it, but a lot of people don't. Because we get our results through others, in fact, relationships are foundational to achieving all of these very important goals we all need to achieve. So yes, relationships matter a lot, as we've been talking about all day today. One other thought I'd ask you to suspend, and that is the natural tendency that we all have, or at least most of us have, to think, you know who really needs to be here? I wish so-and-so were here right now. Ooh, that practice, that's what she does wrong all the time. I can't wait to show her that. Well, then we become the people in Sartre's room, pointing the finger, trying to change each other. And while that's a lot of activity, it accomplishes very little. Meaningful change starts with us. So let's look in the mirror at us. Let's think about us. The most effective, successful, influential people in the world look in the mirror every day, every morning. Not just to shave or put on makeup, but they look in the mirror every morning to say, what do I need to do differently today? What do I need to model? So let's start there. Now, the book doesn't come out until November, but you each were given, I hope, a set of cards. True? If you haven't already, would you take the plastic off those cards? It's secret government plastic, so it takes a minute. Remove that plastic, and you will be able to take home with you just a high-level overview of each of the 15 practices. But if you go ahead and take out the first card right now, it has the titles of all 15. And I want to just read through them quickly. Some of the titles will tell you exactly what the practice is about, and others will be a little more curious or intriguing, which is my intent. The practices are: wear glasses that work, carry your own weather, behave your way to credibility, play your roles well, see the tree, not just the seedling, avoid the pinball syndrome, one I struggle with the most. Think we, not me. Take stock of your emotional bank accounts. And on the back side of the card, examine your real motives. Talk less, listen more. Get your volume right. Extend trust. Make it safe to tell the truth. Align inputs with outputs. And practice number 15, start with humility. So those are the 15 practices. I wish we had time to go through all of them. I was tempted to try that, but I've seen the Academy Awards, and they start the music, and it's very embarrassing. They haul you off, so, even the most prominent of actors, I've seen them be embarrassed as they try and talk through that music. I'm not going to do that. But we will talk through the first one, so you have an idea. If you take out that card, practice 1, wear glasses that work. Now, you can go to any practice that seems to resonate with you, or you think, ooh, I wonder if I'm struggling with that. But do that after you study practice 1, wear glasses that work. Because the way we see things, if all change starts with us, boy, the way we see things shapes everything. So start with practice 1. I remember my first experience with real glasses that worked in the 2nd grade. Got my first pair of glasses. And I put them on, and seriously, I remember for the first time seeing the leaves on the trees. You're thinking, how blind were you? I was pretty blind. Until that moment, I had previously seen this green kind of mass up there. And what's interesting is I actually thought that's what everyone saw when they looked up at the trees. I knew they were leaves when they'd fall on the ground, but I thought everybody, when they looked up there, they saw this green mass until I had my first set of glasses in the 2nd grade. That's the principle behind practice 1, wear glasses that work. Seeing things as they really are, not as we've decided they are, not as we've assumed they are. That's the power behind wearing glasses that work. What we see determines everything we do. And of course, what we do then gives us the results we get. But it all starts out with how we see things. For example, if I'm a micromanager, anybody ever had a micromanager? Ouch. Okay. Anybody been a micromanager? Would all the micromanagers please stand up, okay? All right. If I'm a micromanager, how do I see my team? I'm going to pick on you because I can hear you. How do I see my team if I'm a micromanager? Ineffective. Idiots. Incompetent. This is coming way too easy to you people, okay? All right. So I see my team as incompetent. If I see my team as incompetent, what kinds of things do I do as a micromanager? What's that? Yeah, I hover over them, I'm criticizing them, I'm triple and quadrupling, checking on everything they do. Criticizing. What kind of results does this team get? Not good, poor, mediocre at best. And then, what do I say to myself as the micromanager? See, yeah, I need new people. I want to go to a different room. These people are idiots. Can you imagine the results if I hadn't micromanaged them? I've got to even hover more. And it's this self-fulfilling prophecy, all driven by the way we see things, by the glasses, the inaccurate lenses that we're wearing. I'll give you another quick example, a little more complicated. At Franklin Covey, we espouse that an organization or a team or a family or whatever group, their ultimate competitive advantage is their culture. So let's say as leaders, I see my organization's culture as the responsibility of HR. It's HR's responsibility. They'll take care of it. They'll do the quarterly newsletter, put on the picnic. So I'm very hands-off because HR takes care of the culture. And what kind of a culture do we have? Probably mediocre, probably okay, probably no better or no worse than the other company down the street because this is how a lot of organizations see culture. HR takes care of that. Versus if I see our company or our team's culture as everyone's responsibility, certainly every leader's responsibility, well, then what do I do? Well, I'm very hands-on. I realize that everything I say, every interaction I have, every meeting I conduct impacts, influences the culture. And if I'm mindful of that and I'm making sure everyone in the team is mindful of that, well, then we have this highly engaged, highly involved, excellent culture. Again, all driven by the way we see things. What we see influences what we do and gives us the results we get. Now, at the top of each card, on your wear glasses that work, each practice begins with a couple of questions. One of the questions on the practice 1 says, have you ever discovered that your version of the truth wasn't so true or complete after all? Anybody ever had that happen? Okay, we call that a paradigm shift. We call that a paradigm shift. Okay, just a couple of you have to shout it out. What causes paradigm shifts? Pain. What's that? Failure. Conflict. What's that? Knowledge. Government. We're not going to go there. Government. Change of situation. What's that? Oh, exposure. Okay. Lots of things that come at us that happen to us that cause paradigm shifts. These are common for all of us. We get new information. We have a failure. We have a tragedy. We have a big success with someone we didn't think we'd have. All these different things that happen cause us a paradigm shift. I'd like you to consider and think about what if you were to have a paradigm shift not because of one of these things we've mentioned, but because you have proactively chosen to see someone differently. We're talking about relationships, effective relationships, and all day. What if you, for no other reason, maybe they didn't warrant it, maybe they did, but you chose to see someone differently, and the power that that could have, that paradigm shift that you have. I had one such experience, I've had many, but one that's very memorable with a very important relationship in my life that I'd like to quickly share with you. This is with one of my children, my daughter Sydney. I have 4 children. I live in Utah. They kick you out if you don't have at least 4. So I have 4 children. Sydney is our oldest daughter. And a few years ago, Sydney was a teenager and was struggling with all of the things that you and I, or most of us at least, struggled with as a teenager, trying to fit in, trying to feel good about herself, sense of self-worth. In addition to that, Sydney happens to be deaf. Sydney lost her hearing to meningitis as a baby. Now, I don't share that with you to say, feel sorry for Sydney. I share that with you just to let you know that on top of everything else Sydney has struggled with and struggles with, she has this additional burden to make her feel even more different. So Sydney was struggling a few years ago. I had just completed my first marathon. How many of you have run a marathon? Okay, several of you. I'm not bragging. I didn't win it, but I finished it. Well, I had finished this marathon, and I had this idea about Sydney. I thought, I wonder if she could feel this same sense of accomplishment that I felt, if that would help boost her self-esteem. So I was training for the next marathon about a year later, and I said, Sydney, do you want to run the marathon with Dad this year? She was shocked. You think I could run a marathon? Sure you could, I said. And I think I believed she could, but I don't know if I believed she could. But I wanted her to believe that I believed she could. So I said, sure you could. So we went out and bought some shoes for Sydney, and we started the training program. I have about a 4.5-month training program. And the first couple of weeks went well. And then Sydney got tired. The mornings were cold, and Sydney came to me and said, Dad, I'm not going to do this. It's too hard. I can't do it. Well, I was disappointed, but there was a small part of me, and I'm a little bit embarrassed to tell you this, that thought, well, okay, now I can focus on my training, my speed, my endurance. I had this goal of coming in under 4 hours, which I had not done in my previous marathon. So the marathon came and went. I finished, but I didn't make my goal, and Sydney continued to have life struggles. Marathon came around again the next year. Sydney's still struggling. I said, Sydney, should we try it again? You want to try running the marathon with Dad? She said, you give me another chance? Sure. So we went out and bought her shoes. Not sure why we bought her shoes, because those other shoes didn't get much use. But anyway, we went out and bought her shoes. With Sydney, it was all about the fashion, so she wanted new shoes. Bought her shoes, started the training, and she hung in there a little bit longer this time. About a month or so, as I recall. And then the mornings got cold. Sydney got tired, and she dropped out. I was disappointed, worried, but also started focusing just on my own time. Marathon came and went. I didn't make my goal, and Sydney continued to have life struggles. Well, third marathon came around, third year came around, and I decided to step back and evaluate things. Clearly, my good intentions were not working, and I had a paradigm shift about Sydney. For no other reason than I stepped back and said, wait a minute, Todd, you've got this amazing, talented daughter who has dealt with more in her young life than you'll ever know about. She had been remarkable. Her strength and her resilience growing up with her hearing impairment was phenomenal. And it changed everything in the way I saw her. So I went to her and said, Sydney, let's run the marathon this year. And I'm telling you, she knew as those words came out of her mouth that I could see her crossing the finish line, and she could see it too. And it changed everything. I get a chill right now, seriously, just telling you about this. It changed everything about this third round of training. I noticed things I had never noticed before. I'm embarrassed to tell you, in the previous 2 attempts, we'd go out, and because I was kind of focused on my own speed as well as trying to motivate her, I would actually run out and back, catch up. She was very slow, and I'd run out, or I'd run circles around her in those previous 2 times. I get Dad of the Year, I know. But I was thinking, okay, well, here I can keep up my speed and I can keep her going. Well, you idiot, Todd, no wonder. This person who thinks she's holding you back, of course she's going to drop out. So I stopped doing that. In fact, as slow as she was, and she was pretty slow, I ran right by, but I love her, okay? Right by the side of her. And it's a little thing, but it's a big thing when you're thinking about mentoring and coaching others and being a partner with others. I stayed a little bit behind her, letting her feel like she was taking the lead. And that changed a lot of things. On our longer runs, I noticed she's a small person, and I noticed when we'd carry our own water, and she'd try and reach around and grab her water. It was hard, so I started carrying both our waters. Changed everything. Everything became about Sydney. My only concern at this point, honestly, was each marathon has its closing time. We were training to finish in about 5 hours and 40 minutes, which is okay, but the marathon closed down at 6 hours. And I thought, watch the very thing that I want to be this big flop, because they'll have taken down the balloons and the finish line. And so I was a little bit nervous about thinking if one thing goes wrong, we come in after the finish, it'll blow up. So her brother, our son, lived in California at the time. He was training for the same marathon. And he called me a couple weeks before and he said, Dad, we're going to do this under 4 hours, right? No. I said, TJ, I'm sticking with Sydney. You run your marathon. You come in under 4 hours. This is all about Sydney. Oh, Dad, come on. All about Sydney. So, race day came. TJ, my son, Sydney, and I, we're ready to go. TJ says, I'm staying with you guys. We take off. It was awesome. This marathon was going by so fast. In fact, she teases me to this day. We were at mile 17 and we're running, and I said, Sydney, this is going by too fast. She looked at me like, what moron running a marathon with the, oh, I wish it would last longer. But from the heart, it's how I felt. Having this experience, seeing this person differently, seeing all that they were capable of, and watching them actually fulfill this thing, it was mind-changing. It was life-changing. It really was going by too fast. Okay, I just realized something. You need to lower your expectations for the rest of this story, okay? If Disney ever makes a movie out of this story, yes, we will all have crossed the finish line under 4 hours, okay? Lower your expectations. That didn't happen. But I will tell you, what did happen was miraculous, because we came in over an hour faster than I thought we would. My son came in at 4 hours, 23 minutes, and 47 seconds. I was right there with him, and his sister and my daughter was right there with us. And this was a moment I will never forget. Now, you're going to make me get choked up, so stop it. But I'm going to tell her about the applause I just heard, because this wasn't about me. This was about dumb dad finally putting on glasses that work, seeing the potential in someone else, seeing things for what they really are. Crossing the finish line of my first marathon, it was wonderful. It was great. Crossing the finish line of this marathon, I will never forget it. All because choosing to see something or someone differently. What we see drives what we do, gives us the results that we get. Now, back to your card. At the bottom of the card, on the front, are some descriptors of what happens when we don't implement this practice. In this case, when we don't wear glasses that work. You hold a limited or incomplete view of yourself or others. You hinder potential. You judge people inaccurately. You act on incorrect, premature, or narrow information. All of the things I was doing with Sydney. That's why it's so important to implement this practice, to wear glasses that work. On the back of each of the cards is an application. So if you're thinking, wow, I probably could use this in some areas of my life, there's a quick application here to show you how to start doing that. You choose a situation that isn't going, or a relationship that isn't going as well as you'd like. List all of the things, the reasons why it's not, and then circle or underline those that are facts. By facts, I mean if you shared them with anyone else, they would agree with you. You'll find that there are very few facts. The majority of it are opinions. Opinions that are worth you challenging. And as you challenge those opinions, those paradigms, you'll see a remarkable difference when you step back and choose to wear glasses that work. That's one of the 15 practices in this book. Practice 15, I'm not going to go into because I'm out of time, I think. I can't tell, okay, is start with humility. Humility is the greatest strength we can possess. Humility is not a weakness. Humility is the greatest strength we can possess. Because humility allows us to look in the mirror, to say, you know what, all change begins with me. And while everybody out there may have all these problems, I'm going to start with me. I've got a lot of room for improvement. I've got a lot of areas in which to get better. It's a choice. It's a choice we can choose to make, or we can choose to be the people in Sartre's room continually trying to fix and change each other. But it all boils down to choice. Thank you so much. Thank you.